What's up, everybody? We are back. We're final episode looking at some draft prospects, at least final episode before the actual NFL draft. Looking at tight ends today. We're going to make it into one video looking at 7 tight ends. Supposedly a pretty good tight end class, as always, joined by my father, Jeff. How's it going, Dad?
Hey, how you doing? Let's looking at these tight ends, and it's kind of hard to. Sometimes it's kind of hard to cross the college game to the pro game for tight ends, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, I think definitely tight ends is one of the harder positions to kind of come in and make an impact your first year, because there's a lot more than just catching the ball. They got to trust you to be able to block too. Draft's coming up. We are 2 weeks away officially from the first day of the draft, which is exciting. Dad, you were mentioning you're hearing some funny stuff going, news circulating and things like that.
Yeah, one of them is that the Texans aren't going to draft a quarterback and with the second pick. And one of the stories, which I kind of heard a second part of it, was his agent. It'd be Stroud, C.J. Stroud's agent is the same one as Deshaun Watson's agent, and that is true, and that there's lingering bad feelings from there. But then I heard the story on XM radio today that they said that was not the case. There was not lingering bad feelings between the agent and the Houston Texans and stuff like that. Also, the Texans general manager is going to quit after the draft and go to New England. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of a weird story. And then and I heard Chris Sims talking on XM radio, and he pretty much said that Will Anderson, the number one edge guy, he's not elite. He doesn't, he kind of went through some, he's not a power guy. He's not he doesn't have, elite speed off the corner. And he kind of said in a roundabout way that he got some accidental sacks. That's where his stats are coming from. And I was like, wow, that's pretty shocking to hear and stuff like that. So
that's time of the year where things get a little everything. You hear everything. You hear all the rumors. We don't know what to believe. Kind of just try not to believe anything really until.
Yeah, I think as soon as we hit April 1st, it's kind of like the big lion season goes on. Everything's a lie. So
yeah. I've been hearing interesting things too. I heard the agent story, and I forget if it was more of an issue for the Texans or more of an issue for the agents themselves or both. And I think it's going to make things really interesting. I think Bryce Young is going to be the quarterback that the Panthers take. Now, I know it was kind of came out, it seemed like it was going to be Stroud. 2-3 weeks ago, it almost came out like someone said it was going to be Stroud. I think it's going to be Bryce Young, and I think that's going to make things very interesting because then, you have that Texans. I think they really want Bryce Young. And so if he's gone and they don't take Stroud, and even if they take Anthony Richardson and Stroud falls to number 3 where the Cardinals are, who probably won't be taking a quarterback, it's going to cause a lot of teams to be like, oh, CJ Stroud sitting there at number 3, and then you might get some teams trading up for him, because they're going to see that opportunity, whether it's the Raiders or,
Colts.
Maybe the Colts. Even a team like the Lions or the Seahawks, who already kind of have a quarterback for a year or two, but they might see that opportunity to go up and kind of get their future. So it'd be very interesting to see how it all plays out. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is. There's going to be some fireworks, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's guys falling, like here, Quinton Johnson seems to be falling off of people's lists a little bit and down the list of their top receivers. And
I even heard a story about one of our tight ends we're going to talk to, one of the top tight ends, that he's not all that. So I'll get to that when we get to this guy, and it's like, wow, how do you go from being one of these top ranked guys and, you got all the numbers and measurables and everything else, and all of a sudden, nah, you're not so good after all, or something, so.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see what happens with the tight ends. I do think it's a relatively good tight end class. I mean, I've seen potentially as many as 4 tight ends going in the first round. I'd be a little surprised if there were 4. I mean, I could definitely see 2, maybe 3. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see that. And again, kind of get into it before we get into the actual tight ends, just the meaning of draft capital. Again, I kind of went back and looked at, this time I looked at the top 12 tight ends from each year, because I think after that, it's like, really, what is it? There's not much after even like the top 7 or 8. It's just a bunch of guys averaging basically the same amount of points. So the guys in the top 12 each year since 2013 over the last 10 seasons, so 120 finishes in the top 12. And again, 73% of them are coming from either the first, second, or third round. If you add the 4th round into that, it jumps up to 80% of these tight ends finishing in the top 12 are drafted in the first 4 rounds. And so basically, that's just, it's not so much what team they go to, it's draft capital. It really is, just because, I mean, we see it with guys all the time. Like James Robinson is a good example of a guy who was undrafted, and he finished, I think, like running back 3 his rookie year, a surprise for everyone. Then he had a pretty good even second season, and now he's irrelevant. He's already on his 3rd team. He's on the Patriots, right?
He's on the Patriots?
Correctly. I think so.
Yeah,
he's on the Patriots. Obviously the Jags traded him last year. Obviously he had a big injury, and that's part of it, his Achilles. But that's part of it. It's part of these teams basically saying, well, we didn't really invest much in him, so we can kind of just move on from him. Whereas if he was a first, second round pick, they would have kept him around most likely and given him more chances, even though he had a major injury. So draft capital, very important. I think basically for every position now, it's been about 80% of these top finishers are in the first 3 rounds, 4 rounds. So, we'll get into it. We'll start off. There's basically the top 2 tight ends are pretty consensus, I would say. Dalton Kincaid from Utah and Michael Mayer from Notre Dame are kind of the most consensus top 2, I'd say. We're going to start with Kincaid. He's 6'4", 240, a little bit smaller for tight end build. He runs a 4.7 flat, which is good speed for a tight end. Maybe you want a little bit faster since he's a little undersized. Dad, what do you think about Dalton Kincaid from Utah?
Yeah, I watched some of his videos, and I'm sure USC is happy that this guy's going to the pros, because he kind of tore up USC, and he's good. He's one of these guys who'll be a good receiving tight end. So you're not gonna. He doesn't have, I guess, the ideal size. So it's kind of funny to say somebody's 6'4", 240, but I think maybe they're looking for something a little bit bigger. But he's going to fit in somebody's offense somewhere. He caught 70 passes this past year, and 8 touchdowns, and he had 3 decent years there with at least 2 decent years with the University of Utah. I think he played first 2 years in college at San Diego. Then he transferred to Utah. So he definitely looks the part. He's I think he's a little bit older. He's like 24 years old. So I mean, I don't know if that's a big deal in this guy's case, but he looks good. He's one concern, an injury concern, was I guess back in November he hurt his back and he was unable to do the combine workout, and he was unable to do the pro day workout, and he was only cleared medically like the last week. I mean, it just came in the news that Dalton Kincaid's been cleared medically. So so what does that mean? The teams have a chance to work this guy out? I don't know. Do they trust doctors, say he's cleared medically? And so he might fall, you never know. So teams get a little squeamish on people, but see what happens.
Yeah. He's definitely he's more of like a beefed up receiver than he is a traditional tight end, that's for sure. But he has pretty special receiving skills. I mean, probably better than any tight end in this draft, which teams are going to like. But it does limit him a little bit. If obviously he can make the transition as a blocker. He can put on maybe 10 pounds or something and become a better blocker. He's definitely a willing blocker. He's not necessarily a great blocker, but he's willing. And you can learn. That's why tight ends usually take a year or 2 or even 3. By their 3rd year, they're kind of making a major impact, is because they learn the blocking aspect of it. So we'll see. We'll see where he goes. I do like him as a receiver, and I think he'll be quite talented in that area. You mentioned that he is a little bit older, and which maybe is a concern. I don't know. He'll be 24 in his rookie year, but that's kind of the case with a lot of these guys because of the COVID year. Yeah, I mean, there really wasn't much negative I had about him, just except for maybe like the blocking is like the biggest concern for him. So everything in terms of the receiving part of it, he kind of has it. And he's kind of expected to go in the first round and probably pretty high in the first round. I think, we haven't gotten to other guys, but I liked Dalton Kincaid. I really did. I like him as a fantasy prospect, that's for sure. Maybe, we'll see. Probably my top tight end, though, for fantasy purposes in this draft. But yeah, getting into, again, the next guy who's in that, sometimes people have him ranked as the number 1 guy is Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. Definitely more of a traditional tight end size, 6'4", 265. So he's over 25 pounds heavier than Kincaid. And he still also ran a 4.7 flat. So, I mean, it seemed like Kincaid was faster on the film, but in terms of their 40-yard time, they both ran a 4.7, I believe, unless I got that wrong for Dalton Kincaid. Dad, what did you think about Michael Mayer?
Yeah, he was very productive tight end. He's got the size and everything else. So his blocking is really good. So you don't hear a lot of he catches passes and he blocks well. I mean, would we hear that with Gronk?
Gronk, Kittle.
Yeah, Kittle, but even I forgot his name. Kelsey. Even Kelsey doesn't block so well, but he makes up for it for a lot of different ways. But Michael Mayer, he's got good skills. He caught quite a few passes the last 2 years at Notre Dame, 71 in 2021 and 67. So it's he definitely looks the part. This is the guy I heard a negative about, that he's like, they said he's kind of slow, and kind of a plotting guy, and he might be good down the middle of the field, but that's it. And I'm like, okay, so what else you need? It's just funny hearing criticism about somebody who's pretty good, and it's like, well, what's he going to turn into in the NFL? Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be pretty decent.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, he's definitely not a burner, and that's why I was a little surprised. I don't know if it's official that Kincaid 4.7 flat. He seems faster, and it would make sense being 20 pounds lighter than this guy. But Michael Mayer is just like, he's a thick guy. He's kind of like a traditional tight end, and honestly, for fantasy purposes, I might like Kincaid a little more. For my team, my NFL team, I probably would want Michael Mayer on my team, especially if he's going to be a really good blocker, which he's supposed to be. He was one of the top run blockers in the nation, according to PFF. Which it's so dangerous. Like, these guys that can block and receive well. We already mentioned a couple with Kittle and Gronk. What made Gronk so good, it was like he was elite in the run blocking game. Kittle is elite as a run blocker and a pass catcher. So there's just so much more versatility you can do with that. No one potentially, like, I always think of like an Antonio Gates. Like, no one was worried about him run blocking, knocking someone off the line or something. Obviously, still a Hall of Fame, really good tight end, but just from an NFL perspective, I think I'd want Michael Mayer, and for that reason, I could see him being the number one tight end taken. I think he could, he's not going to beat you over the top or something. He's not going to be doing that, but if I want 10 yards or 8 yards and I need a first down, like, that's kind of what I want for my tight end, right? Elite blocker and a guy that can give me that 8 to 10 yards when I need him, kind of. So, I really liked him. What I saw, I've seen comparisons to Jason Witten, and that kind of makes sense in terms of, like, Jason Witten was not that athletic freak that, like, that kind of, he didn't have the speed like Kelsey does, or even like a George Kittle does, but obviously he was doing something right because he is a Hall of Fame tight end and had like a crazy amount of catches. He was in the league forever. So if you're telling me I'm getting Jason Witten on my team, I'm ecstatic. Really like him. Really, really, really like him. Just as an overall player, I'd be super excited if my team drafted him. I mean, do you see these guys going kind of 1-2, Dad, for the most part?
But it's kind of hard it's kind of hard to say who's 1 and who's 2. It just depends on team needs and something like that. So Mayer could go first, and then away we go. So I think the third guy coming up is going to be pretty good.
That third guy is Luke Musgrave. I think for the most part, from what I saw, is basically the consensus number 3. Definitely in the top 4 tight ends. Another guy that could possibly go in the first round. Most likely, definitely thinks he goes in the second round. I don't see him getting out of there. And he has a little bit of an interesting story. He's 6'6", 250, so he's a taller guy, a little bit heavier than Kincaid. very fast. He runs a 4.61, which is extremely fast for a tight end. And yeah, he just kind of had some bad luck. I mean, he had the COVID year, which was obviously a shortened year, and he had a knee injury. That kind of ended his year this year, right?
Yes.
It kind of ended his year this year, had a knee injury. But he's so highly regarded just from the first couple games this year, from some games in 2021. He's just kind of athletically elite. Again, the 4.61, the hand size, the vertical jump, the broad jump, all that stuff is just kind of way above average for tight ends.
He looks pretty good going down the middle of the field, a little deep and stuff like that. It's kind of funny, a tenth of a second better on the 40, and he's considered fast. But we know there's an eyeball test on guys, how they look, playing the game. Hey, that guy looks fast, and then you look at his numbers, and maybe he's not so good. But Luke Musgrave looks pretty good, and
yeah, definitely. He can win downfield, like up the seam or just over the top for sure. He's really good off the line of scrimmage. Just a lot of good upside. Again, like teams are gonna like that upside. Was it an ACL, that his knee injury? I assume it was an ACL.
Yeah, I didn't hear exactly what the what the knee was. So I think he worked out at the combine. I think.
I think he did too. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he did.
That'd be a miraculous recovery from a September knee injury to working out at the combine. But
yeah, I mean, what is that? 6 months or so? Yeah, I guess so. It'll be interesting to see. He's not like a super elusive guy. Like he's not breaking tackles like a Gronk or something. He kind of goes down very quickly with contact. And the consensus seems to be that he needs work as a blocker as well, which a lot of these guys you're going to get that with, I think. I mean, even if they're good blockers in college, they're going to need to transition to the big boys, in the NFL. So I like Luke Musgrave a lot. I mean, I'd be happy, like, if we think again from dynasty drafts, tight ends are always tricky because it's like, man, I'm going to draft this guy, but what's he going to do for 2 years, And most likely he's not going to do much for 2 years. So like if it came down to like, oh, do I take a Dalton Kincaid with a high second pick, or I can get Luke Musgrave with a high third round pick? I think I might lean the Musgrave side. Just like I still see the value and potential in him, and I'm saving a whole round basically in my rookie mock or my rookie dynasty drafts. So I like him a lot, and excited to see what team he goes to, where he gets drafted. I think he's possibly a first rounder, definitely a second rounder in my opinion. So. We'll move along to our fourth guy. Again, we're going over 7 tight ends. We've already gone over Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave. And the next guy, again, I think is pretty consistently in the top 4 or 5 is Sam Laporta from the tight end University of Iowa, which have produced some guys like Kittle, Hawkinson, Noah Fant. 2 of those guys are first-round picks, and Hawkinson and Fant. Dad, what did you think of Sam Laporta, who is 6'4", 249? He's a 4.59 40, which is, even faster than Musgrave. And that's really fast for a tight end. So what did you think of Laporta?
Yeah, he looked typical. I watch a lot of Big Ten football, so I get to see this guy. And so he looked just like we've identified. Iowa is a big Big Ten, seems to be a tight end factory a little bit. So this guy looks pretty good. I guess he doesn't his run blocking's not the best, but he does seem to get downfield pretty good though. So this past year he caught 58 passes. So I don't think Iowa had the best quarterback situation this year. Had some good players on the team, offense and defense, but he looks the part. He wasn't targeted much in the red zone, but again, I think they were a little quarterback challenged. So
yeah, for sure. He was basically the focal point of their offense for the last 2 years, which again, Iowa is not known for this elite offense or passing offense, but it's nice to see what you want from your tight end is like, oh, they're the main guy of the offense. Nice to see it in college. I had some couple really good years, relatively speaking, for an Iowa pass catching tight end. He's like, where I really like him is he's like really amazing after the catch. His yards after the catch, breaking tackles. He had 30 broken tackles on 111 catches over the last 2 years, which is awesome. Great to see. He's like legitimately fast, which is where you'll see tight ends kind of win going up the seam. You see it with Kelsey all the time, where he just kills you up the seam and takes it for a 30-40 yard touchdown. Like I don't see that with Michael Mayer. I'd be very surprised if he had more than a couple 30 plus yard touchdown catches from Michael Mayer, maybe in his career, just a handful. Whereas this guy can do that because of his speed. Him and Luke Musgrave and Dalton Kincaid. So he's super versatile. They were using him in the slot, out wide. He had a lot of snaps as a receiver, which is really important for the NFL. Versatility is key. Where I'm a little concerned is just he doesn't have the greatest ball skills that you want to see for a tight end. Some drops in there, and just like you want your tight end to be a security blanket. You don't want, it's just kind of a killer for them to be dropping the passes. Just a little worried about that, and we'll see how he progresses as a blocker. I think, that's things that it's a lot harder for us to look at and evaluate from college to the NFL. I think we can relatively evaluate, like, this guy looks good running routes. This guy looks good with the ball in his hands. Blocking is just like, there's a whole nother level to it, that unless you kind of coached or played in, high level football, it's hard to judge it, is I guess what I'm saying. But yeah, super excited about him. I mean, he's another guy I can see going in the second round. And, it's, again, an exciting draft class. There's 4 guys that I'm already pretty excited about. But on to the next one, which is Washington from Georgia.
Yeah, this
a monster.
It's a good story because, he's on the University of Georgia, as we know. It's won the NCAA national championship the last 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. But he's not even the best tight end on the team. They had another guy who was a freshman last year, and he's a sophomore this year, who's quote unquote a better tight end. I forgot the guy's name, but we'll be seeing him coming out of the draft next year. But Darnell Washington, big guy, huge. So
yeah, he's
massive,
6'7".
Yeah,
he's 6'7", 270.
Yep.
And he runs a 4.64, which is insane for being 6'7" and 270. And you run in the mid 4.6s. Like that's, I always like looking these things up. Of since 2000, guys that are that heavy and running that. There was like 4 guys, I think, since 2000 that are like 270 and running better than a 4.65. So it's just like the guy's just like a monster. And his 4.08 shuttle, which is apparently is just like insane as well, and elite. but he's basically known as a run blocker. I mean, I shouldn't say that. He's basically an extra offensive lineman who can also catch passes for your team. Like, I love this guy, especially from I want my team to have him on, the Chargers or, whoever your team is. If they draft Darnell Washington, you should be super excited because you're getting an offensive lineman who can run and catch. I don't know fantasy-wise what it's going to translate to personally. I think if he's going to win and have kind of big fantasy seasons, it's going to be like big touchdown years. Like, as you would expect, he's not like dynamic with the ball in his hands, but he's a huge target. And if he can get like a Robert Tonyan 500-yard, 10 touchdown year, you're going to be excited. This guy's going to be in the NFL for 15 years, though.
He's going to be, who he reminds me of is, and I know he's old and everything else, and he's probably done, is Mercedes Lewis.
Yeah, who had a 16, 17-year career.
Yeah.
Though
the last half of it was mostly as a run blocker and stuff like that, but he had some pretty productive red zone touchdown years there with Jacksonville, I think it was.
Yeah, he had one like big fantasy year, and that was basically it. He had 700 yards and 10 touchdowns. Never had more than 5 in a season after that. But there's a reason why this guy's been playing since he's a tight end playing since he was 38 years old in 16, 17 years, which is like, I think besides quarterbacks and kickers, is the longest tenured career currently in the NFL. I know I don't think he's on a team right now, but
no, he's a free agent.
You don't see any player besides a quarterback, kickers, punters, maybe like offensive linemen play 15 plus years. You don't see receivers, definitely not running backs. Most of the time you don't see tight ends. So that's why I kind of say like Darnell Washington is going to be a fantastic player. You're going to love him on your football team. He's going to be in the NFL for 15 years. We'll see if he can be a significant red zone threat. He might have some fantasy value, but I don't see him putting up much more than 500, 600 yards in his best years. So, but yeah, it's just pretty insane to kind of watch the guy. I think he has like 11-inch hands or something ridiculous too. Just like an absolute monster on the field. And it's fun to watch him block, that's for sure. And it looks like he's projected to be like a third rounder. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets taken higher, to be honest, just from how elite he is as a blocker. 2 more guys we're getting into. Another school that produces some tight ends is South Dakota State and Tucker Kraft. I know Goddard went there. Wasn't there someone else recently from South Dakota State?
I don't know. I get them in North Dakota mixed up, so I know.
Yeah, maybe it is North Dakota that I'm thinking. It might be last year, actually, like someone from North Dakota State. Anyways, I'll kind of look that up as we talk about it. But yeah, Tucker Kraft, 6'6", 250. Oh, sorry, 6'5", 255. Dad, what did you think of Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State?
Yeah, he got injured this year. He's a junior, so he played 3 years, and so he didn't complete the season. He ended up catching 27 passes. So when he did play, like 2021, he was very productive. Caught 65 passes, 6 touchdowns. So he seems pretty productive in the receiving area. Some of the things that some of the things that are said about him, he's a little raw physically, but he's got all the necessary traits and things like that. So,
yep. Yeah. I was kind of looking it up. I didn't find it, so I might be just misremembering. But yeah, he definitely seems to have all that raw physical traits. He runs the 4.69, which is good. He's not a small guy by any means. Um, we'll see at the run blocking. I think even more so with these guys. So South Dakota State, obviously, you're playing. You're not playing the best competition, right? In terms of you're not playing in the SEC or something like that. You're still Division One, but it's obviously a step down from the FBS teams and things like that. So you have to take that into account when you're watching him block. Like he could be blocking against guys who are going to be, I don't know, car salesman next year or something, right?
Bagging groceries.
Possibly, yeah. So you keep that in mind. But yeah, he does seem to kind of have all the traits. Seems very athletic, very good, just very natural runner with the ball in his hands, and yeah, you can definitely see that he just kind of looked a step up, which is what you want when you're looking for NFL prospects and they're playing at like an FCS school. Like you want them to dominate and look like they're playing against, as a man against boys type of thing. So, interested again, another guy that seems to be projected as like a day 2 pick, second, third rounder. So it's 6 of these guys now that could possibly go in the second round. And definitely by the end of day 2, which is great draft capital for tight ends. That's what you want to see. I'm just kind of looking up from last year. We had, I don't believe we had it. We had no first rounders. We had a second rounder. We had 2 third rounders, 3 third rounders. So we had 4 guys go in the top 3 rounds, whereas we're already looking at possibly 6 guys going, maybe another one, and maybe more. Our last guy is Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan, 6'6", 250.
Go
Dad,
Blue.
at your school, what did you impressions of Schoonmaker?
Yeah, every time he caught the ball, it was Luke. So
Yeah.
Very kind of first off, Michigan runs the ball in extremely kind of an old-fashioned offense, I guess you'd want to call it. Not this wide open, chuck the ball around. So what does that mean for Schoonmaker? It means he blocked a lot, and he's a big boy, 6'6", 250. So he's never going to beat you down the field in the passing game or anything like that. But he's good underneath, intermediate routes and things like that. He's got decent hands, and I think he's a pretty smart guy. His 40 time was 4.63, so it's not terrible, but it's not gonna be beating anybody deep or anything like that. But so he's I think he was a senior, so I think he was like 24 years old or something. So
yeah, he's going to turn 25.
Yeah, so he's been around the block. He played at Michigan for quite a few years, and so yeah. This is what I think what you want to see from, you either want to see when these guys, you start getting into the later prospects, you want to see them either be like very athletic and take a chance on their athleticism, or you want to see them be really good blockers, and that's how they're going to get on the field, is because they can block, and because of that, they're going to catch some passes too, and if he kind of develops maybe a little bit more as a pass catcher, route runner, he could be a really good NFL tight end. Like you said, it seems like he's going to kill in the intermediate routes and the intermediate level of the field. Not so much
He's not going to beat you deep. Although, 4.63 speed is good speed. So he's just not like super athletic with the ball in his hands. And apparently not maybe the best with contested catches, which is a little concerning for tight ends because a lot of times you are going to be making some contested catches. But, he was kind of, like you mentioned before, Michigan's offense is not a down the field, is not a big passing offense. But he was kind of like their secret weapon is what I read about him, or like his old reliable.
That's a good analogy there.
Yeah, like he kind of just made that offense. He was that piece that kind of just like made the whole offense go, because he could block, and you can do so much with that when you can block and you can catch the ball. Like there's just so much more you can do with that. So I like him. I know he's been getting a lot of hype lately. Like a lot of people have been talking about him, and he's again another guy is possibly projected as a 3rd round pick. So there's seven guys we went over that could all go by the end of day 2 with 3rd round draft capital, which shows you why it's a pretty highly regarded tight end class. And there's going to be other guys that go. We've covered now all 4 fantasy positions of quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. We've gone over 20 running backs, 20 receivers, 12 or 13 quarterbacks, 7 tight ends. We're going to miss some guys. There's going to be some guys that are taken in the 3rd, 4th that we didn't talk about. So we'll probably go over those guys after the draft afterwards, and just kind of go back and see, okay, let's go back and look at this guy. Why did he get drafted 3rd, 4th round? What do we think about him? But for the most part, I think most of the guys we talked about should be taken, in the by the end of the 4th round. Most of these guys that are taken, in the first 4 rounds, we should have talked about. But that kind of wraps up our look at the draft prospects, offensive fantasy dynasty purposes. 2 weeks away from the draft. Excited for it. We're going to be doing some rookie mock drafts, several before the actual draft, obviously redoing them after the mock draft once we get some landing spots, which will be great. And we'll keep putting out some dynasty content for you guys. We would appreciate it if you liked the video, subscribe. We're finally over 100 subscribers, which is awesome. So next stop is 150. That's our next stop. So, Dad, any last words? Anything for the draft?
No, there's a ton of information out there. If you have a dynasty rookie draft coming up shortly after the NFL draft, just there's a lot of things out there. Make yourself, based upon your draft position, make yourself a little list of maybe top 5 guys in each position. And there's guys that'll be available that we may have talked about them lower on the totem pole. They may go 3rd or 4th round in a dynasty draft, but they're gonna do something, and you might have to hang on to them. Of course, as we said, a lot of rookies don't start doing well until about halfway through the season. Nobody's hitting the field, running for 1,000 yards or anything like that. So just be patient, just do a little homework, and it should be good.
Yeah, I agree. And pay more attention or take into account draft capital more than landing spot. I think, in our dynasty league last year, and I'm sure in a lot of dynasty leagues, like Garrett Wilson fell a bit because he was on the Jets. Don't let that happen. Like, just trust in where they're drafted and their talent and your evaluation of them. So that's more important for sure. But we appreciate you guys listening, and we will catch you guys soon.